All right. Hello, class. This is for my civics students. If you are a world geography student of mine, you can watch. You'll learn something. But this is about the lesson that I posted this week for my civics students. My civics class, I posted some sources this week that I wanted you to look over. And then one was a video, and there was two news articles that were correlating with the video. And so I wanted you to look over those and kind of gather your opinion about them, write a summary, and then tell me the differences between the three. And so I just wanted to get on here and kind of discuss those with you, kind of one way. We have a Zoom call tonight or this afternoon, and so we can discuss it more there. But I wanted to kind of teach you a little bit and give you some insight about what some of those words and terms mean, because in order for us to determine, or I guess to discuss or keep learning about the economy and how the U.S., I guess really how money works in the U.S., if we want to really study that and understand how that works for you and I, we have to understand some of the words that we're going to talk about today. So I wanted you to look at three sources. The first one was a video by a congressman a guy by the name of Rand Paul. Rand Paul is a senator. I believe he's from Kentucky, I want to say. And I don't know if he's a senator. He's a congressman. And his dad was a longtime congressman by the name of Ron Paul. And you might have heard of Ron Paul because Ron Paul ran for president. Gosh, I must have been in high school, maybe middle school. But they are very, very libertarian. They believe that the government should shrink, and your freedoms, your ability to do things should grow. And so for people who are more conservative in my class, this sounds like a good idea to you probably. And so Rand Paul is the son of Ron Paul. He's a congressman, and he wanted to, I think during Obama's second term, wanted to audit the Federal Reserve. Now, those are two vocabulary words that you probably have not heard it until this point: audit and Federal Reserve. So we're going to talk about that. The second one source was from a website called Slate, and Slate is a news, I think it used to be a magazine, but it's kind of talking about the ramifications of what a true audit on the Federal Reserve could do. And then the third website, which was called New Republic, which I don't think it could not be any more biased. You could tell if you read it that the people who at New Republic do not like Rand Paul, do not believe in Rand Paul's politics. And so I kind of gave you a variety. And so that's why I wanted you to read those and to look at those and kind of get an idea of what we're going to look at today. So let's talk about Rand Paul for a second. So Rand Paul, very conservative, very libertarian congressman, and he believes that the Federal Reserve, there should be an audit on the Federal Reserve. Okay, let's talk about that for a second. The Federal Reserve, what is the Federal Reserve? This is how I want you to think about it. Now, there's a definition out there that I want you to get that when you do your summary, I want you to get. But I want you to, when you think of the Federal Reserve, I basically want you to think of that is the government bank. Whenever, you and I, we have banks, your parents probably have banks, Chase, Capital One, Red River, whatever. That is like the U.S. federal government's banking system. And so they have a couple of duties, the Federal Reserve. They want to make sure employment is high. They want to make sure your interest rates are low. They want to make sure the U.S. dollar, has lots of value. And so we're going to talk about what all that means later on. But Rand Paul believes that the federal government, there should be a private audit onto the Federal Reserve. Okay, now what's an audit? An audit, you've probably heard it if you ever watched shows like Ozark or Breaking Bad or Mad Men. No, Mad Men didn't have any audits. It's basically saying we want to look over your financial records to make sure you're not doing anything nefarious. You're not doing anything wrong. And so typically when an audit is happening, they want to look through your financial records, make sure you're paying your taxes, making sure no illegal money's coming in. And so whenever you hear I'm being audited, that's what that means. Mr. Wall always makes jokes about being audited, about how Northwood always sells fried chicken and Taco Bell, pizza, very healthy options, very healthy. If Cata Parrish is watching this, very healthy. And so where that money goes is very important. And so Mr. Wall always wants to make sure that money goes to the right place. And so if Northwood ever gets audited, we're good to go because we're doing everything legally. I didn't try to implicate Mr. Wall just there. I hope that if he's watching this, I'm very healthy. It all goes to a great place. But that's what an audit is. And so Slate and your New Republic source believes that not only is an audit to the Federal Reserve not a good idea, they believe it would do the opposite effect. Here's why. New Republic believes that it's a bad idea because, one, there are already audits on the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve's money is always being looked at. And so they're basically saying, look, Ron Paul's doing this for politics, and it really wouldn't do much. Now, Rand Paul would obviously respond with saying, I think there was a quote in New Republic saying those are fake audits or not real audits. That's a basically he said, she said type of situation. Now, Slate, on the other hand, I really liked Slate's argument. I think Slate and Rand Paul, those back and forth, I learned a lot from these sources. Slate said that it's a bad idea not because of Rand Paul's politics. That's not the reason why it's a bad idea. The reason why it's a bad idea is because it will cause inflation to go up. Now, I know all of you are watching this right now with the notebook and you're meticulously taking notes. Here's something you need to write down. The word inflation is a very, very important vocabulary word. And inflation is a word that a lot of smart people say whenever they're talking about the economy. Now, it's very important for you to know what inflation means so that whenever you hear it in the news or you hear people say it, you know what they're talking about, okay? So one of Rand Paul's biggest talking points, one of his biggest things that he talks about is how the U.S., our money, our dollars, was backed up by a gold system, okay? What that means is for every dollar you owned, there was a dollar worth of gold somewhere so that the U.S. federal government could give value to the money that you had, okay? That was called the gold system, okay? And for a long time, the U.S. was run on the gold system. In fact, a lot of people believe that sorry, Sarah's working in the garden. She's all over the place. A lot of people believe that what's that movie called? The Wizard of Oz is a commentary on the U.S. being on the gold standard. This is super nerdy and not important, but it's just a fun fact. The yellow brick road, it's gold, and they're walking on the yellow brick road, and it kind of takes them to places, and they look up Yellow Brick Road gold standard. Look it up. I promise you'll find something. We got up the gold standards, I think, in the 70s with Richard Nixon. And right now, the thing that gives our money value is faith. Our faith gives, and I'm not talking about, Easter faith. I'm talking about the fact that whenever you go to the gas station and pay $2 for a Coke, that gas station person will take that money and get that faith in the dollar system. That we all are going, hey, we all agree that this money is worth something, all right? Are we all cool? We good with that? Great. Because it's not backed up by anything. Now, Rand Paul believes that that's bad because at any point during a depression or during a time where our debt catches up with us, that money could not be equal to what it should be equal to because of our faith. And so he believes it needs to be backed up by something. The reason why I'm talking about this is because the Federal Reserve is in charge of that money, even though it has no inherent value besides what we place on it. Let me explain. So a $1 bill, okay, $1 in the US, and we've talked about this in class before, is not worth as much now as it was in the 50s, okay? In the 1950s, a dollar was worth way more than it is worth now. Let me prove it to you. Back when, I'm a youngin', just like you guys. Back when your grandparents or some of the older teachers at Northwood, I don't want to say any names. I'm not going to say any names. Were alive. They could go down and they could go down to the store and they could order a Coke for a dime. Okay. A dime won't buy you much of anything today. Okay, Coke is probably like $1.50 at the gas station nowadays. our money could buy you way more. A dollar could buy you, oh gosh, my screen just went black. Am I back? I'm back. Okay. A dollar could buy you bread, flour, meat, cheese, milk, and you'd be good to go. Nowadays, a dollar could maybe buy you eggs. Maybe. And so that's called inflation. The rise and fall of the worth of the American dollar. And so if any of you have ever traveled out of the country, US dollars aren't used everywhere in the world. And so whenever like for example, this summer when I went to France, I had to exchange my US dollars for euros, okay? And so I went to the exchange place and I think I gave them $100 in US money. And they gave me like $88, $86 in euros because the euro, the money that they use in Europe, is worth more than the American dollar. Now, not by much, all right? So I gave them 100. I think they gave me 86 euros. So that's not a lot. That's not a big deal. And so if I were a person in Europe and I were to bring someone in, if I were to come to the U.S. and give a U.S. exchange service 86 euros, they would give me $100. So that's cool. But there's other places like Mexico or the Dominican Republic where $1 of one US dollar is equal to like 200 of their dollars. I think in Japan, like they use, I think like $1 US is worth to like 300 of their dollars. It's something crazy. And so Venezuela is actually suffering a lot from this right now. We'll talk more about that when we talk about debt and we talk about certain economic systems. We talked about capitalism and socialism, but we're going to go more into depth about that. But the important thing is that the reason why I'm talking about all of this is because Slate said that if you audit the Federal Reserve, our money will be looked at very meticulously by whoever. And our faith in that US dollar will go down. Well, if our faith goes down in the US dollar, the value of the dollar also goes down, okay? And if our value in that dollar goes down, the less valuable it is when you purchase things, okay? And that's what's inflation. That's what's called inflation, okay? And so I'm sure all of you have had the genius idea, whenever the economy's bad or whenever the US is in so much debt, we all have the amazing idea when we're younger. Why don't we just print more money? If we just printed more money, that would solve all of our problems. The US government prints our money. Why don't they just print $1,000, give it to everyone? They basically just did that. Sarah and I got our stimulus checks today. They basically just did that. Whole nother video, whole nother day. But the reason why they can't do that is because if they do that, the more money that is printed, the more money that's out there, the less valuable that money is. And that makes sense, right? Whenever we have a lot of something, high supply, the demand goes down. And whenever you have a high supply of something, but a low demand, what happens to the price? Goes super down, big time. Now, when you have a low supply of something and a high demand of something, so a low amount of cash out there, but a high demand of it, it becomes like that Honus Wagner baseball card, and that price skyrockets. The value of the dollar skyrockets. So, guys, I just wanted to again give you an explanation of those sources. And when we're talking about the Federal Reserve, audit, inflation, all those words that were in there in those articles and those sources, I just wanted to kind of give you a background of what those meant and kind of bring us back to the classroom a little bit. Guys, I hope you're staying safe. If you have any questions, you know where to email me. You can email me or hit me on Remind. I miss y'all. I love y'all. And I hope all of y'all are able to get on Zoom today and then next week. All right? Peace.